Hello and welcome to Facilities Grid webinar from OPR review to lessons learned meeting. Manage it all in Facility Grid. Thank you for joining us. In today's webinar, I will demonstrate how to successfully manage every commissioning task in Facility Grid, and by doing so, increase productivity of commissioning teams. First, let me introduce myself. My name is Alex Kozinets, and I am a Chief Product Officer at Facility Grid. I am leading up product strategy and customer success and conducting the educational programming and webinars. My background is in mechanical engineering, construction administration, and commissioning. I have used Facility Grid on various commissioning projects throughout my career. So as a former commissioning professional, I'm here to help Facility Grid be even more focused on its customers. Now let's get to the webinar you came for. In today's webinar, we will review how to streamline generation of up-to-date progress commissioning reports and final commissioning deliverables, how to manage and document all activities in a dedicated commissioning software, and how to promote clear and open communications between members of the project teams. So, what is the main reason for using a commissioning software? I would argue that, amongst others, it is to increase productivity of commissioning teams. The three most common ways you can do that using Facility Grid are minimizing administrative work, reducing duplicate efforts, and cutting down on chasing others. So let's review each one of these in detail. The most efforts commissioning agents spend on administrative work is when they are required to generate up-to-date progress commissioning reports and final commissioning deliverables. How can Facility Grid help you minimize these efforts? Well, let's start with the progress reports. Once you secure a new project, you can start populating Facility Grid with the commissioning tasks per the project scope. For example, in the design phase, we will be conducting design reviews. So let's go ahead and create these tasks. So currently, I am in the design phase of the project, and under the design phase, I'm going to scroll down to the design review task and create this 4 subtasks. So if my scope calls for 4 reviews of the design documents, I'm going to go ahead and document these 4 subtasks. So in this case, I may be asked to review 100% of schematic design, 100% of design development documents, and then perform 2 reviews of the construction documents, 50% and 100%. Next, I may create placeholders for the commissioning meeting. Let's say I know that in construction phase, my scope includes of conducting 15 commissioning meetings. So I'm going to go to the construction phase of the project, select meetings task, and then under the subtasks, I'm going to create 15 placeholders. So I know that at any point of time, I can look at the status of the meetings and very easily tell how many meetings have I already conducted and how many meetings are still remaining. Next, I may choose to document the equipment submittals. So if I know, for example, in this case, I have to review 5 equipment submittals for 5 types of equipment, again, I'm going to go ahead and document each subtask for every equipment to be reviewed. So next, I would like to generate a percent complete report, basically to indicate the progress of every single task that I'm tracking in Facility Grid. To do so, under Settings, I'm going to go to the Reporting tool. And I'm going to select a function to show percent complete of commissioning tasks. Next, I'm going to save and exit. Once this feature is activated, when I go to the overview page, this overview page displays the status of every single commissioning activities that I would like to track. So basically, as you remember, we documented that we want to perform, or we're required to perform, 4 design reviews. So you can see where Facility Grid is showing me that I have performed 2 of the 4 reviews. So I know I'm 50% done. Next, we can look at the equipment submittals. I know I have to review 5 submittals. Once I review 2, I'm at 40% complete, and that's what Facility Grid is showing me. Same with meetings. So meetings, I've indicated that my scope includes 15 meetings during the construction phase. I've conducted 3 of them. So Facility Grid is telling me that I'm at 20% complete as far as the meetings. Next, I would like to generate detailed reporting on checklist statuses. So for example, if I go to the tests and checklists, when you get to this page, you can see the status of every single checklist. Basically, in terms of how many questions have been answered, how many checklists have been signed off. But to get some additional information, I can click on the Details tab and get to the page displaying every single checklist in a detailed view, where I can track activity not just per checklist, but per individual contractor. So if I want to know what is the status of questions required to be answered by the controls contractor, I'm going to select controls contractor as one of the participants to be tracked here. And on this page, I can very quickly get to information related to a particular contractor. Again, a very easy way to generate any type of report showing me the status of the checklists per each contractor. The next task I may want to do is to manage commissioning documentation in the equipment library. So at the end of the commissioning project, the most laborious task is to create a commissioning report and a systems manual. Facility Grid provides you with capabilities to create both documents. I will be actually conducting a separate webinar reviewing these 2 functionalities for generating commissioning reports and the systems manual. However, in order for you to be able to produce these documents at the end of the project, what you want to do is you want to be very diligent in managing documentation in Facility Grid and making sure that every time you produce some type of a document or review a document, it is all stored in Facility Grid. Documents in Facility Grid can be linked to any task or subtask. They can be linked to equipment. They can be linked to equipment types. They can be linked to issues and pretty much to any type of process that you conduct in Facility Grid. You can locate the documents under the Documents tab. And within the tab, you can create folders, and Facility Grid will display the documents per these folders. So typically, you may have an HVC folder, and under the HVC folder, you have several types of documents. And so, for example, if you want to get to the O&M documentation, that would be under the operations and maintenance folder. And you can choose any O&M. You can find any O&M document that you've stored in Facility Grid. Again, the reason you want to do this is because when you are done with the project and the final task is to generate that final commissioning report or the systems manual, all documentation is in one location, and Facility Grid will help you streamline the process of generating the reports. Next, how do we reduce duplicate efforts? Well, Facility Grid is a tool intended for managing and documenting all commissioning activities. Typically, the first commissioning task is to review the owner project requirements. Let's see how we can document this process in Facility Grid. I'm clicking on the Commissioning Task tab and going in the Design phase of the project. So under the Owner Project Requirements task, I have two subtasks, Draft and Final OPR. Let's see how we document review of the final Owner Project Requirements document. When you open any subtask in Facility Grid, you will see several text fields that you can populate at will. Any fields that are blank will not be printed when you generate a report out of this particular subtask. So in this case, we performed a review of the final owner project requirements. We documented the status of this task as completed. We indicated the purpose of this review. We can document notes directly in this field or as issues. We can also document any recommendations that we would like to provide to the owner. In the participants field, we can indicate who participated in the task of reviewing the owner project requirements document. Under the documents, we can attach that document. And again, as you remember, once you attach something, once you attach a document in Facility Grid, under any task, it is all stored in the documents section of the project. And then all your review comments can be documented as issues. As you probably know, when you create an issue in Facility Grid, that issue is assigned an abbreviation that is related to the associated subtask. In this case, the subtask is the OPR2, and the issues that we're documenting here are our comments to to the owner on this document. So in this case, we've documented our notes. We assigned a priority to this task. Once the our comments are conveyed to the owner, then the owner may respond to the task, or we can document the responses under the responses section by clicking on the plus button to add the response. And as you can see that the entire process of the review of the owner project requirements is documented here in this document, in this location. So basically, Instead of conducting this review, in some other um, in Word, for example, and then emailing it to the client, and then following the client to get the answers back, we can manage this entire process in Facility Grid. Next, let's see how we can manage meeting notes. So again, under the tasks, I'm going to go to the construction phase of the project. And as you remember, we've indicated that we own 15 commissioning meetings. I'm going to the meetings phase or meeting tasks, and I have my 15 subtasks. Let's say we're documenting the kickoff commissioning meeting. Again, when I get to the page of this subtask, in this case, it's a meeting, Facility Grid provides this several areas where we could document what happened in the meeting. We can document the purpose of the meeting. We can take notes during the meeting and have these notes be added to the notes field. We can then also provide any recommendations that came out of that meeting. We can also indicate who participated in the meeting. Next, if you happen to use your own company template, maybe it's in Word, to document meeting notes, you can still do that. But what we encourage you to do is then PDF the document and upload to Facility Grid to this section for this particular meeting, so that again, all records of every single activity are in Facility Grid. So what if you have any issues or actions that you would like to document that came out of this meeting? Well, again, you can do it in the issues section of the meeting. Remember, your issues that you document as part of this task will be assigned the abbreviation of this subtask, which is in this case meeting number 3. And as part of this meeting, you can again document the issues, assign priority, associate issues with any assets, and so on and so forth. Now let's see how we can manage review equipment submittals. So what happens a lot of times on project is the construction team uses a third-party construction management software to manage reviews of submittals, processing of RFIs, and so on and so forth. What happens is subcontractors submit their equipment submittals. The submittals get posted on those construction management platforms, and then the engineer of record is notified that a submittal is available. Then the submittal gets downloaded by the engineer of record, and then the commissioning team is also notified of those submittals and is required to conduct concurrent reviews of the submittals and communicate their comments to the engineer of record. Now, obviously, that process can be handled within the same construction management platform. However, the problem with that is that typically the commissioning agent's comments are most of the time intended not for the contractor, not for the subcontractor, but for consideration by the engineer of record. Therefore, the most efficient way is to communicate those comments directly to the engineer of record. Why not do it in Facility Grid? If I go to the task, if I go to the construction section of the project, and I go to the equipment submittals. So, as you remember, I've created 5 subtasks for review of equipment submittals. I'm going to look as an example at the equipment submittal number 2 for HVAC pumps. Again, when I open the subtask, I have several sections where I can document purpose, notes, or recommendations. However, I can skip populating these boxes and proceed to the participant section where I can indicate who actually participated in review of this document or of this submittal, and then use the document section to upload the submittal that I have reviewed, or if I marked up a PDF document, I can upload this document in the section as well, and then document by comments in the issue section of this task. Again, the issues that I generate as part of this task will be given the abbreviation of this task. In this case, it's ES2, which is equipment submittal 2. So here, I can document my comments. I can link my comments to assets, which is, as you know, is very important because at any point of working on the project, I can very quickly get to all the comments, all the issues related to particular assets. So again, in this case, I have linked this equipment submittal to the asset. I dedicated my responsibility to this for responding to the issue to mechanical engineer. I assigned the resolution due date, and this is where once I save this issue, the engineer of record gets instant notification of my comments, and as a response to my comment, they can just simply come to this issue, click on responses, and under the notes section indicate that they will agree with my comments or not agree with my comments, and state why not. Once they document their responses, they can simply switch the status to pending approval or any other status that they feel is necessary. And then once the commissioning agent gets notified of this response, the commissioning agent can review that and close this issue. Again, by doing so, you have the record within Facility Grid of you performing this task of reviewing this particular submittal. You have a single location of all your comments on submittal. So if you're working on large projects, you may have tens or hundreds of various equipment submittals that you've reviewed. And now Facility Grid provides a single location of documenting all your review comments. So if at any point of time you need to get to every single comment on the equipment submittals, and if you're asked to produce the report with your comments on equipment submittals, you can simply come to the issues log, filter out all the issues that were created as part of equipment submittal reviews, select all of them, and generate a report. Now, another way to eliminate duplicating of efforts is managing verification of equipment parameters. How do we do that? Let's look at an equipment exhaust fan 2.2. As you know, in Facility Grid, you can document all assets that are commissioned throughout the process. The assets in Facility Grid are managed as equipment types, equipment, and systems. So in this case, I'm looking at equipment EF 2.2. This particular asset has various parameters. And if my goal on this particular project is to document the equipment parameters and then verify that the equipment parameters of the assets installed in the field match those per the approved equipment submittals, then I can utilize the um, equipment verification section in the checklists. How do I do that? I can scroll down to the associated checklist. And now this checklist is displaying the equipment parameters that I have captured during review of the equipment submittals. So under the approved submittal data column, all the parameters that I have collected and documented on the previous page displayed right here. And then it is responsibility of the installing subcontractor to review these parameters and to indicate whether the data entered during the equipment submittals reviews match that of the installed equipment. So contractors simply answer questions on whether that information matches the information entered by the commissioning agent. So in this case, if the manufacturer of this particular fan is GreenHack, they answer the question yes, and then that information is automatically copied in the as installed equipment data. Same with the model. And then when you come to the serial number, typically that information is not available on the job site. I'm sorry, this information is not available as part of the equipment submittal reviews. So the installing subcontractor will answer this question as NA. And when he or she answers NA, this field becomes open, and this is where they can indicate that information, and so on and so forth. If any information does not match what was specified, then again, they can answer the question as no, and then indicate what is the right information. So how do we cut duplicate efforts in this case? Well, very simply, nobody else, neither commissioning agent nor the building operator will be required to then do double work of verifying that documentation or information to go into the CMMS system, for example, to manage the operation and maintenance of a building. Once that information is provided here, commissioning agent can verify that and then simply click on the icon to update the existing information with as installed information. And by doing that, at the end of the project, all the data that is required to be passed to the to your client will be available and verified on the job site. Next, let's look how you can document lessons learned meeting, for example. So again, we're going to go to the tasks, and we're going to go to the occupancy phase of the project. Under the occupancy phase of the project, we will look at the meetings, And we know that um, our last meeting will be to review the lessons learned on the project. Well, very similar to how we documented the other meeting notes, we can document lessons learned. Again, instead of producing a separate document, instead of sending it to the project team, you can do it right here. Again, use the same fields. You can document the purpose of this particular meeting. You can document the notes that you've taken. So basically, you can, in this case, document any steps that you've taken in the commissioning process. You can evaluate the commissioning process itself. You can discuss whatever were the project successes. You can also document challenges, benefits, and so on and so forth. You can document any recommendations. In this case, what would be the opportunities and recommendation to improve the commissioning process on the future projects. You can document who participated in the meeting. And again, if you want to create any follow-up actions, or if you want to attach any documents, you would do under the issues or the document section of this particular task. So we've covered how to minimize administrative work. We went over how to reduce duplicate efforts, and let's see how we can cut on chasing others. And when I talk about chasing others, as you know, there's a lot of people involved in the commissioning process. Commissioning team is not just you, the commissioning agent or commissioning authority or commissioning professional. It is the entire project team, starting from the owner representative to the engineer of record, general contractor, construction manager, installing subcontractors, manufacturers, and so on and so forth. So how we can cut down on chasing the team members? Well, Facility Grid helps promoting clear and open communications between all project teams. Let's look at managing issues. Facility Grid streamlines generation, notification, assigning, responding, and status tracking of the issues. As an example, let's look at one of the issues. Let's look at this issue. So you can see that on this page, this is where all the information or all communication is managed. Okay, so we can track status, we can manage the tracking of responsibility. If we at some point need to reassign responsibility, again, it happens in the responsibility section of the issues. All the responses to the issues are tracked in this section of the issues, and so once the issues are created or responded to, the notifications go to those who the issues are assigned to, and also to those who we document as those to be notified on issues. Okay, so instead of using a Excel spreadsheet to track issues, to chasing various project participants in responding to issues, you can simply use the issues log to manage that entire process. Next, let's look at a situation where engineer of record is asking you to provide a list of equipment submittals to be reviewed. So basically, when they review the submittals, they need to know which submittals the commissioning team is responsible for reviewing. So they can ask you this question, or they can simply come to the to facility grid, go to the construction phase of the project, go to the equipment submittal section, and here is where all the equipment submittals are indicated. So basically, if in the beginning of the project you diligently went ahead and documented as placeholders which equipment submittals you're planning on reviewing, so the engineer will definitely know to which equipment submittals they are to expect your responses. Next, let's assume the subcontractor is asking you for status of checklists and FPTs. Okay, so the commissioning agent is obviously responsible for generating checklists and FPTs. And a lot of times, the contractors are anxious to find out when the commissioning team will be done developing those documents. So to do that, again, we would go into the project overview, and on the overview page, we can simply go to the FPT generation section. And in this case, we can see that out of 258 FPTs, we've already generated 257. Under the checklist generation, out of 533 checklists, we've generated 194. So instead of this question being addressed to the commissioning agent and the commissioning agent, having go through what they've created, calculating and communicating it back to the construction team, the construction team can simply go to this page and get all the answers in real time. What if JN contractor asks the commissioning team to indicate the projected duration of the functional tests to include in the construction schedule? Well, you can do that as well. Under the tests, we go into the functional performance testing. And let's assume we are looking at the an FPT for an air handling unit. We're going to switch to the equipment type and go to this FPT. Now, under the duration section of this FPT, we're going to indicate that the projected duration for this particular FPT is 8 hours. Okay, we've created this FPT on the type level, right? So meaning that the same FPT will apply to every instance of the same test. So again, instead of JN contractor construction manager chasing you for this information, if the information is included in this test, the JN contractor can simply use this data, use this information to plan their functional testing activities in the construction schedule. How do you track the actual duration of the tests? Well, you can do that as well. So under the FPTs, we will go to the equipment section. Of the FPTs, and let's look at the FPT for a FENCOL unit. We're going to go back to the duration section of the FPT, and you can see that in this case, we projected that we're going to spend 1 hour on this particular test. And then in this section in the actual duration section, we're going to document when we start every single test, every single attempt of the test, and then when we end that attempt. And then by doing so, you can see where Facility Grid is calculating that this particular test took actually 2 hours and 30 minutes. Again, this information can be used to communicate our status or our usage of time to the building owner, for example. And the last item that I would like to cover in this webinar is communicating the requirements for the functional performance tests. As you know, in Facility Grid, you can manage that communication by allowing your project team to complete functional performance tests as pre-verification tests. Facility Grid, once you create an FPT in Facility Grid will create a pre-verification test automatically, which is an exact copy of the FPTs, and basically the goal is that to encourage your project team to pre-test or conduct pre-verification testing before you as a CXA show up at the job site to conduct your own tests. So the goal is that a commissioning agent creates a FPT, Facility Grid automatically creates a pre-verification test, and then when the contractor comes to conduct any of the pre-verification tests, if there are any items on the test, any steps in the test that they have difficulties with conducting or have a better way or any suggestions on how to improve the testing, they can indicate in the FPT. So for example, if they would like to conduct a pre-verification test of this electrical unit heater, they can simply go through the questions and create issues and direct those issues to the commissioning team. By doing so, you can review any of the comments that the contractor may have prior to you showing up. You can address any of the comments and hopefully resolve them before you actually conducting the test. Well, this completes the webinar. I am now going to look at the questions, and it looks like I have several. The first question is, if the issue resolution due date is not met, will Facility Grid resend out a notification? No, Facility Grid is currently not resending any notification to or not resending any automatic notification to the project team. This is one of the functionalities that actually on our roadmap. But the goal is that once the if the data is not met, and you can clearly see it looking at the status of the issues, and then you can just follow up with the team by resending the notification. Next question, does Facility Grid has fault diagnostic detection task when we go through the trend review? Very, very interesting question. Facility Grid provides you a list of standard tasks based on the standard commissioning process. So if monitoring-based commissioning or fault detection diagnostics is part of your scope of the project, you can add that task to the list of tasks. So simply, if you're performing this task, if you're reviewing the trends during the occupancy phase of the project, you can add this additional task under the occupancy phase. You can call it AFDD. You can also provide the same abbreviation. And when you do that, the task will appear under the task. And this is where you could manage any of the comments that you may have related to the fault detection diagnostics reviews. When you create a subtask, you can then document, again, a purpose of your reviews, taking notes, recommendations, again, indicate who participate in the review. But most importantly, this is under the documents. You can store any of the trends that you have taken, and under the issues, you can document any of the comments related to those trends. Next, multiple parties need access to facility grid to complete the commissioning process. Does everyone have to have a license, or does the licensee enroll registered users without additional cost? The only participant requiring a commissioning license or facility grid license, a paid commissioning license, is the commissioning company. So once the commissioning company owns the license of facility grid, it can invite as many participants or any type of participants to the project, and at no cost to those participants. Also, some of our clients are building owners. So when building owners own the license of facility grid, then the same license applies to every single participant, including commissioning agents. So if you're working on the project and the building owner owns the facility grid license and you're the commissioning agent, you will not be required to pay for the license. The license will be provided to you by the building owner at no cost. And the last question is, can an owner's CMMS import data from facility grid electronically? Excellent question. And the simple answer is yes. And to do that, you can simply go to the asset screen. Then you can click on the equipment page. And on the equipment page, you can simply select every single asset on your project. You can indicate that you're interested in all assets. You can select all assets. You can simply go to the Excel export and click on equipment data. Once you do that, Facility Grid will generate an Excel spreadsheet with all equipment data that you have verified and documented in Facility Grid, and with all associated parameters. And that spreadsheet can be provided to the managers of your CMMS software. So for example, if it's a Maximo CMMS, that typically you would provide that spreadsheet to the Maximo integrator, and then the Maximo integrator would be able to upload it directly into Maximo. Also, since Facility Grid is a COBie compliant software, which is the industry standard for exchanging BIM related information, at the end of the project, Facility Grid allows you to export a COBie file directly out of Facility Grid. And again, if the project is using COBie standard to exchange information, that COBie file can be used to populate your client's CMMS system. Well, thank you very much for attending today's webinar. I look forward on seeing you on the future webinars. Thank you and have a nice day.